Screw this. Screw this playthrough so much. Out of all the entire DLC of this entire game I have experienced so far, that Shadow's Very Hard mode is the pinnacle of frustrating, and it's also repetitive, tedious, and worst of all, dragged on. Which I'll explain more about that if we somehow get this thing started. So, hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Mexi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos as always. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog, or most people call it Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 for the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3. So, last time we essentially did manage to finish up everything for Silver's Very Hard mode by going to not only in Kingdom Valley, but also in Flame Core as well. Even though, mind you, about the fact that with Flame Core in mind, that was actually quite rough. Especially noticeable because I wasn't expecting about the fact that those rings can able to actually clear through the lava and everything, but chances are though, I somehow managed able to receive not only the A rank on Kingdom Valley, which is actually a pretty good rank, and as far as Flame Core is concerned, I've somehow stumbled across into the lowest rank so far. To be more specifically, the B rank most likely. So, but chances are though, yeah, it has been quite some time since we actually come across into a B rank since, I would say, since Very Hard mode for Sonic's Kingdom Valley as well, but that was mainly because of the Mark Speed section towards the end. So, anyway, today for this video is about the fact that we're about to tackle through the final piece of DLC for the sake of the forms of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. And here we go, folks, onto the most notorious DLC I've ever experienced in a gosh dang Sonic game. And that's what appears to be by the forms of Shadow's Very Hard mode, by experiencing all of those stages again, except the fact that, oh, this thing just decides to able to make it like a marathon. Oh, like, kind of thing about it though is about the fact that if you are very curious, if you really want to try out every single DLC for Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 just before the Xbox Live marketplace, specifically the Xbox 360 version, is about to close down. So no matter what though, I'm pretty sure no matter what though, most of you players out there who's already experienced some DLC with Team Attack Amigo, Boss Attacks, alongside with Very Hard mode for Sonic and Silver, but you might also experience with the forms of Shadow's Very Hard mode. And I repeat, don't recommend getting the forms of, you know, this is by far the most punishing DLC, and it's also by far the worst DLC I've ever experienced. Like, it's like a combination of the forms of both Sonic's and Silver's Very Hard mode. Like, in some cases though, in some stages though, it's about the fact you experience the entire stage in backwards, and also not to mention though, there's a ton of enemies you have to deal with, just like the forms of how it does it on Silver's Very Hard mode. And relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that you have to able to deal with them a lot, by the way, because there might be a couple of times about the fact that the progression has been locked due to the forms of the amount of enemy encounters you have to deal with. And do you remember that particular part in Journey forms of the only time in Aquatic Base in Sonic's Very Hard mode, that basically that was the only time so far that we somehow managed able to not only play as Sonic, but also with Tails and Knuckles in the exact same level, to be more specifically in Aquatic Base. Guess what though, in the majority of the forms of Shadow's Very Hard mode, my god, you have to play as Rouge and Omega so many gosh dang times, like ranging between the forms of, well, let's just say that Omega's attack thing with all this particular P-shoot just feels a bit wonky for its hit detection, and not to mention though, the actual range, or the actual attack range, is pathetic and all that stuff. And even then though, to make matters worse, if we play as Rouge in any other segments, you have to find all these gosh darn keys for so many segments, each with its own. It's so confusing. And relatively speaking now, prepare yourselves with the forms of a lot of marathon scenarios. To be more specifically, journey forms of, at this point of right about now, we've only going to be going into 2 stages so far in this beginning portion of Shadow's Very Hard mode. And believe me, what I'm saying is because this is the reason why I have decided able to still edit out the loading screens, because otherwise, if I don't do this at all, my god, it'll be a 50-minute mark, or to make matters worse, 1 hour. I mean, good lord, man. But anyway, enough about, with that being said though, I suppose we should probably be able to discuss upon the forms of another topics at this point and what have you. So, yeah, let's do that, why not? So, anyway, a few things I want to talk about this, while at the same time we got able to actually just play as not only Rouge, but also E123 Omega all of the dang time with all of the levels in the game. Well, to be more specifically, all of the stages in Very Hard mode. Now, I'm sure enough though, if we get into the forms of Aquatic Base, I'm pretty sure that it's not possible we can able to play as Silver after all, because like I said before, since during the forms have been last Friday, specifically the 12th of April, that basically though is about the fact that we're able to say a farewell to the gameplay style of not only for Silver, but also for Sonic as well. Because chances are though, like I said before, we have to play as not only Shadow, but also Rouge and Omega all of the time in journey forms of the majority of the Very Hard mode. And relatively speaking though, is about the fact that there is one in particular exception to the actual stages department though, which I'll explain more about it if we get onto this Friday, which means about the fact that yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the final week for the sake of able to playing through Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, because my goodness, that was, I'm not gonna lie to you folks, this is the reason why it took so long to able to actually get this entire process going for the majority of the forms the uploading schedules alike throughout the majority of Sonic 06 actually has to offer. And relatively speaking, that's all I can really say about that, I guess. So anyway, also there's another rare occasions where basically it's about the fact that not only you have to defeat all those enemies on this specific section right here, but it's also worth noting for we have to destroy all of the searchlights until you've progressed. So, let's just say, for instance, about the fact that since we're onto this section right here, basically though is about the fact that not only we have to collect the first 3 keys, but also we have to grab another 6 keys, making a grand total of 9 keys to obtain. That's pretty monotonous, I will have to admit it though right away. So generally speaking though, is about the fact that, as I said before, I would not recommend getting the forms of Shadow's Very Hard mode, unless if you decide able to be very curious like I do. Because believe me, what I'm saying is, it doesn't really matter if you either have the Xbox 360 version or the PlayStation 3 version for the sake of European and the Japanese versions. Well, to be brutally honest here, I just think that this particular process of able to actually notice something like this is just maddening. So anyway, so let's get into the forms of another topics from this point, shall we? So anyway, and also another thing too, and that's what appears to be about the fact that yes, every once in a while in some stages coming up, we have to force able to actually get onto the majority of the vehicles for Shadow, and it's just, you know, it's just too much, I'm telling you, it's just way too much. So anyway, because believe me, what I'm saying is that whenever I first got to this point on the Xbox 360 version, my god, I keep on having a lot of rage quits all of a sudden, mainly because it's too much to handle, or perhaps even to make matters worse, there is this very annoying mechanic where basically though, we'll soon to see what happens during at some point whenever we get to the second stage in Shadow's Very Hard mode, which is of course Kingdom Valley. And speaking of which though, this will be the final time we're going to be seeing White Acropolis for right now, as well as the forms of Kingdom Valley, because obviously we've gained towards the end of this entire playthrough after all. So relatively speaking though, I can't even believe about the fact that time itself just went flying by, you know? So, but anyway, let's get into the forms of the actual topics at this point today, folks. And that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, here is the 15th of April today, in some cases in 2024 today. So naturally speaking, it's about the fact that I'm pretty sure until tomorrow that we're going to be approaching on to the halfway point in terms of the forms of April, before we're able to actually just to move on to the 5th month of 2024, and that's what appears to be May. So relatively speaking though, is about the fact that, well, I'm pretty concerned about the fact that we've only just got about, if I recall correctly, we've only got about, actually I can't even remember, because I'm pretty sure that Pac-Man has already mentioned about that, since in Journey Phones have been Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure for the Game Boy Advance version already, so I don't suppose we're probably not going to mention about it right now, just because, you know, Pac-Man, he's already mentioned that. And speaking of which, I'm pretty sure that Pac-Man, he's almost going to be finishing up everything for the sake of the films of Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure on the Game Boy Advance now, because I'm pretty sure he's now on to the final stage just before the actual playthrough wraps up. So I'm pretty sure no matter what though, I don't suppose that unlike in Piglet's Big Game, on the Game Boy Advance version, that basically I don't think it's possible that he's gonna go, like, tackle through extra content from the sake of the films of, well, I'm sure about the fact that he'd already explained about this as well. So generally speaking, that's as far as I can try to able to explain about the films of the actual current updates for the majority of the films, the uploading schedules for right now anyway. So yeah, relatively speaking, that's as far as I can try to say about that, I guess. So anyways, let's get into the films of another topic at this point, and it looks like, as it turns out, that at some point in Journey Films of later this week, that something tells me we might able to actually get ourselves the first trailer for the upcoming Transformers 1 for the sake of the films of until this Thursday coming up, specifically 18th of April. So I'm not exactly sure if that will be the case. Well, I'm sure we'll find things out until specifically later on throughout this week. So because of that though, yeah, that's all I can really say about that. And also, as far as I'm aware, since that we're now on to, we're still on 2024 after all, so this means no matter what though, something tells me there's going to be some even more films anniversaries coming up, which is to be more specifically both of them, which there are The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. So as a result, both of those films did originally came out in 1939, so yeah, as a result, for this particular year anyway, for 2024, will mark the 85th anniversary of those two film releases between both The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. So yeah, that was actually quite a cool milestone for the sake of able to reach for its 85th anniversary for those films departments to able to celebrate. So maybe, just maybe, I'm also able to actually just to give myself a bit of a chance to able to actually rewatch The Wizard of Oz again. So just in case I can able to actually try to able to celebrate that particular film's anniversary. So generally speaking, I was about the fact that, wow, it's been, well, quite a long time, potentially speaking. Well, mind you, we're not exactly at 85 years just yet, for the sake of the films of The Wizard of Oz, you know, 85th anniversary just yet, because I believe that particular film also seemed to release on not only in 1939, but it also did came out on August in that year. So at least that's as far as I can usually say about that. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting. So, and also, speaking of which though, is about the fact that every once in a while though, is about the fact you do realize about the fact that similar to the forms of how it does it on, not only on hard mode as you can tell, but also with the forms of a normal mode as well. Basically though, we have to destroy every single searchlight, just like the forms of how it does it in, well, not only on normal mode, but also in hard mode as well. At least for I did my test runs for the sake of the forms of the majority of both of those runs respectively during the course of in the well, between both the Xbox 360 version for the sake of the achievements on my own time, and as well as the forms of the PlayStation 3 version for the sake of bragging rights, I guess. So, but anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is that recently GameSpot has recently got the revealed for the sake of the forms of the 8-minute gameplay footage for the upcoming Epic Mickey Rebrushed. And from what I've seen, the actual gameplay footage, it looks quite a lot nicer compared to the forms of how it does in the original Wii version. I mean, relatively speaking though, they did show us the forms of the UI display, which as a result, it looks remarkably similar to the original counterparts, except the fact that the major difference is this time, it's no longer drawing in 2D. So as a result, it now shows us a 3D model of Mickey's face icon to represent the forms of the health meter. And speaking of which though, I'm pretty sure about the fact that the actual health points is now turned into heart symbols to represent the forms of how much health you've got. So yeah, generally speaking though, it makes sense because obviously no matter what though, unlike the original version, basically though it just shows us some red dots. So yeah, that's as far as I can say about it. Whilst unlike in Epic Mickey 2, the power of 2, basically though it just shows us the actual square icons to represent how much health you've got, as well as the forms of how much paint you've had left, as well as thinner you have left. So at least as far as I'm assuming so anyway. So, and yeah, for what I've noticed something about this is that I've realized about the fact that, well, thank God they do somehow manage able to bring out manual camera controls at the very least. So, because obviously back in 2010, that a lot of people complain about the forms of the camera for the sake of the forms of the original version of Epic Mickey to begin with. So I'm really hoping about the fact that the manual camera controls will be coming to play until when that particular remake decides to release for Epic Mickey Rebrushed. So, now I'm pretty sure enough though is about the fact that much like what I've noticed on the gameplay footage as well, that just like the forms of how it does it on Epic Mickey The Power of 2, specifically on not only for the Wii U, but also with the forms of the Xbox 360 version, as well as the PlayStation 3 version, assuming if you don't able to actually access to the PlayStation Move controller, where basically though is about the fact that I think something tells me we have to able to just, well, utilize with the cursor on the center in order to able to just try to use the paint or the thinner. So yeah, it might be really clumsy to use, at least in my honest opinion. Although, I'm really hoping if you do manage to utilize with the Joy-Con controllers to able to replicate the forms of the Wii Remote and Nunchuck controls, not just by the forms of it in the first game, but also with the second game as well. Although, mind you, despite the fact that I no longer have the original version of Epic Mickey, alongside with Epic Mickey 2, both on the Wii, by the way, just because no matter what though, because of the space capacity for its memory storage, as well as that though, my Nunchuck is having a lot of issues lately. So because of that though, yeah, I might try my best able to give those games another chance eventually, but I highly doubt it, just because no matter what though, is that with Epic Mickey 2, does suffers the forms of a lot of technical issues, as well as the forms of some game-breaking glitches, and all that stuff. So, that's as far as I can try to able to expect for this point. So, anyway, enough about that. So let's talk about the forms of the most exciting aspect, at least to me anyway, especially noticeable that, yes indeed, we've just somehow received, well, that did happen since in 5 days ago, relatively speaking. That's what appears to be about the fact that, yes, we've received the actual new trailer for the sake of Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble. I almost said Banana Mania because I keep thinking about 2021 for some reason. But anyway though, yes, we somehow received a new trailer for the likes of Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, and as it turns out, it's going to be revealed a story, to be more specifically with this adventure trailer. So yeah, as it turns out, the actual plot of the game is that, potentially speaking though, it did somehow reveal this particular description, and it did say, while visiting a tropical island, Ai and the gang meet an adventurer named Paulette, who's searching for the legendary banana. They agree to, potentially speaking though, to agree to join her journey across wondrous worlds to collect special parts said to be the key to locating this prized relic. Along the way, they'll meet new friends, and on top of that, they'll also encounter mysterious rivals in a thrilling story told through fully developed cutscenes. So, yeah, this is actually quite interesting though, especially noticeable. Whenever I first looked at the forms of those specific rivals on screen, I was assuming about the fact that that's going to be one of those Dr. Baboon's henchmen, or perhaps even maybe it's something else for that matter. Well, then again though, we've only just got about 2 more months left until the game decides to able to come out exclusively for the Nintendo Switch, by the way. So of course there won't be any PlayStation 4 versions or even PlayStation 5 versions anywhere. So chances are though, I'm still perfectly gonna be fine with only with one version in particular, because obviously that, my goodness, I just keep on buying, well, multiple versions, because obviously with trophy support, as well as the achievement support within, like, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, so generally speaking, I just still really can't help it for myself about the fact that I do sometimes manage to enjoy some games, depending on the forms of certain difficulty with all these trophies and achievements to obtain, but either way. So, yeah, relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that there was also the point where basically though they did somehow address something for that particular description, for that particular other announcement, or specifically another set of updates they did bring for Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble. That's what appears to be about the fact that, well, apparently so, they did somehow reveal their names of one of those worlds in particular. Like, for instance, I think they somehow revealed 5 worlds so far for its names anyway. So, for instance, the first world is going to be called Banana Farm, and on top of that, with World 2, it's going to call it Rose Garden, and for World 3, it's going to call it Floating City, and World 4 is going to be Golden Temple, and World 5 is going to be called Stone Valley. So yeah, this seems kind of an interesting world names in particular. I'm not exactly sure how many worlds they were able to contain. My guess, it will probably have to be by the forms of maybe 10 worlds, just like the forms of how it does it in not only Super Monkey Ball 2, but alongside with Super Monkey Ball Deluxe for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. And even especially noticeable with, let's just say, Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz in both the Wii and remastered version for its HD counterparts, as well as the forms of Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. Well, we shall wait and see what happens during at some point in the next 2 months, because they did still say 200 stages, so my guess it will able to actually contain 20 stages per world, at least if I'm assuming so anyway, but then again, we'll have to wait and see. So, and in addition about the fact that they did somehow mention about the forms of 5 named worlds so far, and as a result they also mentioned something related to the fact that yes, indeed, much like the forms of how it does it on Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, they did mention about the forms of that specific assist tools that you can able to actually utilize with, except the fact that I don't think it's possible they're able to actually bring us slow motion thing, unlike in Banana Mania. And in addition to that though, with extensive amount of time, or even especially noticeable with the forms of well, let's just say, I think that's as far as I can say about the forms of the actual assist mode for the likes of the forms of Banana Mania kind of thing about it. Whilst in the forms of Banana Rumble this time, it only features 3 different things, ranging from rewind to the previous point of the stage to attempt a trickier area once more, and they also suggest with the forms of Ghost Guide adds a transparent racer alongside the player, demonstrating the key methods needing to reach the goal. And finally, though, is about the fact that they've decided to act in checkpoints. So, yeah, that seems kind of feels a bit similar to the forms of how it does it for casual mode from the likes of Mario vs. Donkey Kong Remake. So, yeah, generally speaking, that's as far as we can able to say about this right about now. In terms of the forms of how the fact that they did somehow bring a brand new trailer, alongside with the forms of some new gameplay information for the likes of Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, and I'm pretty sure no matter what though, I'm still basically excited for it, despite the fact that the actual art style is a bit questionable though, especially noticeable because I have no idea that why the art style needs to change now, because I don't know about you, because I'm still more accustomed to the forms of the classic style, and alongside with the forms of maybe the modern era from the likes of Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz and onwards. I don't know about you, because it has been quite some time since we actually played something related to Super Monkey Ball since well, Super Monkey Ball on the Nokia N-Gage, because I'm pretty sure enough though, like I said this before, that we've almost done with the forms of the rest of the Super Monkey Ball game series up to this point. Well, there might be a couple of exceptions though, mind you, like for instance that, did you guys know about the fact that it's been almost 10 years since that Super Monkey Ball Bounce did somehow came out on mobile phones, despite the fact that unfortunately for that game has recently got delisted, and on top of that is unplayable anymore, just because no matter what though, I used to play that game back in the day when I first got myself iPhone 5, which mind you, it was actually second hand, so this means that I've actually come across into the worst battery life for that particular phone alone. And anyway, because whenever I first played the forms of Super Monkey Ball Bounce back then in 2014 regardless, that it plays very similar to Pico Blast, for I've noticed that anyway, except with the fact that it's all basically Super Monkey Ball skin. So yeah, that's the only things I can probably think about it. So anyway, so of course we've made again with the forms of the stupid crumbling towers, and relatively speaking, it's already bad enough with this very wonky camera angles, and still, no matter what though, is about the fact that, like I said before, we have to utilize with the forms of a lot of vehicles. So yeah, no matter what though, that's as far as I can try to explain about the forms of how Shadow's very hard mode actually plays out to be. I mean, still, no matter what though, I seriously still do not recommend experiencing Shadow's very hard mode. Although, to be fair though, because obviously not only did I somehow got this on the PlayStation 3 version, but also I still managed to got this entire DLC on the Xbox 360 version back then, just because of curiosity, and on top of that, just for bragging rights, as well as for, you know, participating in the ultimate challenge up ahead. And relatively speaking, that's all I could really ask for. So because of that though, yeah, there might be a couple of times that you might saw that basically though, I was gonna able to actually waste some of these lives. Well, nowhere near as much compared to the forms of how it does it in, well, the majority of some stages for some capacity. So, but anyway, so with that being said though, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, still haven't heard anything for the sake of the forms of Cap King 74 just yet though. I mean, after all, he definitely deserves a break. Well, after the events of dealing with the most difficult boss battle in the entire, well, Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix in general, that's of course Lingering Will. So no matter what though, it's about the fact that he still needs to be able to focus on extra amount of content for the likes of the Final Mix version of Kingdom Hearts 2 specifically, which, that reminds me, I was expecting to try to able to actually tackle through Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix as well, but unfortunately though, it's not gonna happen, mainly because no matter what though, I've heard about the fact that the opening cinematic cutscene, alongside with the ending cutscene as well, it feels like that's one of those YouTube copyright claims seems to be a little bit more strict, at least as far as I can definitely tell from the get-go, whilst usually relatively speaking though, because unlike recently, for the likes of our perspective on Sonic 06, to be more specifically, by the end of Sonic's story, that, yeah, we did somehow come across into a copyright issue, which as a result, thankfully it's been solved, despite the fact that we lost a lot of, commentary at one point in during the forms of in a credit sequence, but that's just mainly because no matter what though, that I do apologize with the forms of this unexpected copyright claim for the sake of the forms of one of those specific songs, which appears to be called Sweet Dreams, Sonic let's just say Sweet Dreams 06 Akon Mix. So yeah, that's as far as I can try to able to explain it all that, because it's kind of weird that unlike All Hail Shadow, alongside with the forms of Dreams of an Absolution, alongside with the forms of My Destiny, never actually got ourselves a copyright claim to begin with. I mean, it's kind of weird though, like, even though I just got nothing else to really add around here, so. And relatively speaking though, is about the fact that by this point, once we do somehow finish up everything for Sonic 06, then obviously, no matter what though, that Tiana, she able to actually go back onto Princess Peach Showtime until tomorrow, so yeah, that's very understandably so. And yeah, nothing else to really add around here. I mean, no matter what though, I'm still unfortunately going back onto Mario Kart Tour, because something tells me we're going back onto Spring Tour based off from 2023 version, because no matter what though, we're going back into Athens Dash, and this time about the fact that I might try to go after a different character this time, which it could be either be one of those Mii racing suits, or let's just say one of those cool outfits for Rosalina. So yeah, we'll shall see what happens there. And also, as you can tell, that we've come across into this annoying mechanic for very hard mode for Shadow, because not only is it incredibly luck-based, but it's also very annoyingly consistent, because as you can tell, the actual red laser gate decides to block, and no matter what though, in order to able to actually clip through, like I just did from earlier, basically though, we need to activate the Chaos Energy Kaioken mode, because obviously, if you manage to able to like, well, again, it's incredibly luck-based, but I'm sure enough that I somehow managed to clip through this by very lucky, mind you. So I'm not exactly sure how do I explain about this, because no matter what though, yeah, then again, it's incredibly finicky to able to actually go and clip for that particular laser gate, and still, it just feels a bit luck-based, as I've already mentioned about this before, so... And relatively speaking though, since we've somehow managed able to fully complete White Acropolis now, so this means about the fact that, as you can tell, we're now onto Kingdom Valley, which you probably already noticed right from the start, and this is going to be the final time we're going to be experiencing Kingdom Valley, because my goodness, while looking back in Kingdom Valley up to this point right now, that this is generally, without a doubt, is one of the hardest stages in the entire game, alongside with the forms of the end of the world, just because of this very devastating gimmick. So even then, no, that's as far as I can try to able to explain all of that. And it's also worth noting for is about the fact that it's pretty cool about the fact that that was the only cool thing about the forms of very hard mode for the likes of Shadow anyway, is that E123 Omega can now able to experience, well, the majority of some stages anyway, between the forms of, let's just say, White Acropolis, well, despite the fact that we've already technically played as him since in Team Attack Amigo DLC, and on top of that, he can now able to actually decide able to explore Kingdom Valley, because despite the fact that with the plot significance, obviously though, that you can only play as Shadow and Rouge on that particular point, because generally speaking, though, it's about the fact that, well, relatively speaking, though, it's about the fact that, then again, we have to play as not only Shadow, but also with Omega and Rouge all the time, so yeah, there's gonna be a lot of long-ish moments, so yeah, and this is the reason why it took so long to able to actually get this video going, especially noticeable because I just want to get this entire thing done for this point, folks, before we move on to the next batch of Sonic games, just before when, you know, Sonic Cross Shadow Generations is about to be coming. I mean, relatively speaking, though, the good thing about this is about the fact that we're still on the forms of the process of the year of Shadow after all. So generally speaking, that makes perfect sense to able to actually celebrate something Shadow the Hedgehog related. Just before when Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is about to be approaching for its the movie anyway, alongside with the forms of, as I mentioned this before, Sonic Cross Shadow Generations. So because of that though, I'm really hoping about the fact that we can able to potentially try to able to tackle through Sonic Cross Shadow Generations by the end of this year in 2024. So, or maybe likely in 2025, depending on the forms of how long specific Let's Plays we're able to contain. So, just like the forms of how it does it in back in 2022, that we were originally trying to able to tackle through Sonic Colors Ultimate in 2021, but because it was delayed until 2022, because of the forms of the patch updates that needs to be addressed, because obviously if I decide to play through the game day one, alongside with the forms of trying to tackle for the entire Let's Play of the game, also during the forms of in day one, oh my god, that would be a total disaster, especially noticeable with this particular glitches, alongside with the forms of some technical issues, and on top of all that stuff though, there's going to be a lot of like, well, seizure reducing moments, specifically on the Switch version back then, so alongside with the forms of this very, very annoying moments where whenever I first experienced the Switch version of Sonic Colors Ultimate, that's in one of those particular game land levels that, my god, why did they manage to able to incorporate with the entire black screen that somehow showed up in during forms of one of those specific, you know, game land levels? I mean, it just makes no sense to me. So, Oh yeah, I should also mention about this one last thing I want to mention about, is that, yes indeed, about the fact that this whole entire very hard mode is basically purchasable for DLC, which obviously no matter what though, unlike in hard mode, alongside with normal mode, that I don't think it's possible you can able to get additional solely on the silver medals, alongside with the forms of the gold medals as well, just because the very hard mode is just pretty much optional, and also not to mention those about the fact that they do not able to actually include any of those achievements during the forms of if you managed able to purchase this entire DLC. And by the way, something's worth noting for, like I said this likely a couple of days ago, the achievements description is quite literally in worst English you ever gonna be hearing. Like for example, if you managed able to gather every single abilities for Sonic, that you get the achievement called the Blue Phantom. And what's the description for it? Well, it says this: Super Sonic, obtain the all moves. And yeah, it is the worst English I've ever heard for one of those Xbox 360 achievements description I've ever heard, but then again, it's all because of how the fact that this game is rushed as it is. So, anyways though, with that being said folks, it's about the fact that we got to endings up at this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 on very hard mode. And that's what appears to be about the fact that we're going on to Crisis City, all the way up to, let's just say, Radical Train basically. So because of that, we're going back to 3 stages per run. So I'll see you guys until on Wednesday. Later fellas.